Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Zwick's Flicks, the Ed Zwick podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and with me today I have a first-time appearing guest co-host. His name is Jared. He is from... Okay, Jared, I appreciate it. Sorry, I'm laughing because...
It's right there at the bottom, Ryan. Come on, you can do it.
I'm laughing because Jared has guest hosted with me a few times on my Rambo podcast, my Rocky podcast, and the Last of the Action Heroes type podcast that we do on that network. Check those shows out. And I often butcher the podcast that Jared runs, but I won't do it today. This is too important. This podcast, Zwick's Flicks, is too serious. We're too important. No shenanigans here, Jared. So Jared is the podcast god from the hyperspace podcasting in the 25th century. Jared, how you doing?
Man, what an intro. I'm doing good, Ryan. How are you?
Good. I just want to say to all of our viewers, do not adjust your dials. That is the best podcast radio voice you'll hear ever on this feed.
Well, I don't know about that. Katie's pretty good. But,
she's great, but she's done. She's retired. She's doing no more. I don't think I'm even joking. She's done 3, which is fantastic. And like we said in the last episode, she was the guest co-host for 3 episodes that just happened to be at the beginning of the movies. But I think she's done. She's gone. We've got more people coming. She's done her 3. Okay. Jared, thank you so much for coming on Zwick's Flicks. I'm really excited to talk about Courage Under Fire with you. One, because you're a great podcaster and a good online friend. We haven't met in person yet, but I hope to one day. You're just a good cat, and I appreciate your friendship and your kindness and your time.
That's very kind, Ryan. Back at you, buddy.
No, thanks, man.
If you ever come down to Florida to visit our beautiful beaches and theme parks, please look me up. I'm right down the road.
To. I've been to Disney World, but back when you and I didn't know each other, I was 15. That's the last time I've been to Florida.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's many moons ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. So, Jared, you asked me a question offline. Would you mind bearing repeating that question, though?
I just wondered why you in particular would start, of all things, an Ed Zwick podcast.
It's funny. I'm not a fanatic of all of his films, per se, in the sense I hadn't seen a couple, like Leaving Normal, when Katie and I covered Leaving Normal. Never seen it before until I started this podcast. So that was part of the reason I started the podcast, was there are films in his filmography that I love, i.e. Legends of the Fall, the episode before this one, that I've seen numerous times over decades. Last Samurai, Glory. Those are like the big kind of holy grail of his films that jump out at me off the top of my head. And so there's certain directors that speak to me on certain movies that other directors just never have. So I thought, well, why not just do not just the ones I enjoy, why not just do his whole filmography? What made Ed Zwick? Or how does a director handle other films when other films touch you so deeply? And that's kind of what it's about. So it's interesting to watch his styling, which will come into play with Courage Under Fire for sure. Like, oh, that's a kind of Ed Zwick. That's his flavor, or that's his mantra. You know how like Quentin Tarantino likes feet?
Sure.
Yeah. I think Ed Zwick likes the big sweeping scores. He likes the war scenes and things like that. He's really good at that kind of stuff. Feet and war scenes. You got it depends on what your flavor is, I guess. Okay, so that's basically why. And I will tease something here. Ed Zwick only has 13 films that made it to the, that are considered his films, that are studio films, not TV films, but 13 studio films. The next director I'm going to tackle, because I've already got my next project lined up, is actually Michael Mann.
Okay.
Same idea. And I would actually say Michael Mann might even have more films that I've enjoyed, like Heat, Last of the Mohicans, Manhunter. Sure. There's some incredible films there. So we'll get into those. That'll be my next project. So, of course, Jared, I'll invite you on that one as well if you'd be so willing. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, why did you choose Courage Under Fire?
Because you asked me to do it.
Okay. All right. So that adds... Well, I can't remember. Some people I gave a choice to. Some people said this is what's left. I don't know.
If I recall, that's kind of what it was. It was like, well, here's the films that we haven't assigned a co-host to. I picked Courage Under Fire.
All right. Now, what is your history with the movie? Was this your first time seeing it for the podcast? Had you seen it before some moons ago? What's going on here?
I saw it in the theater when it was released. By that time, 1996, I was already... I've been a film buff for quite a while at that point. I was 21 years old, I think. So, and Ed Zwick was definitely on my radar for movies like Legends of the Fall, Glory, being the 2 that are top of my mind.
Of course.
This movie, I remember being excited about it, seeing commercials and trailers for it, because it was, at that time in the mid-90s, it was like a Gulf War movie. We'd seen plenty of Vietnam movies,
Yes.
and of course, there's a whole back catalog of World War II movies. But at that time, the Gulf War was only a few years old.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is an interesting place to set a film. I remember in the theater watching it. I did enjoy it. You get caught up in it.
Yeah.
It certainly isn't like an action adventure film, although there are scenes of the war scenes in this are fantastic. I remember walking away from the movie thinking that it was a way more introspective movie than I was anticipating going in. And after seeing it in the theater, I had not watched it until I sat down just a few days ago to prep for this podcast. So it had been, almost 30 years since I'd watched it.
It's funny, Jared. You and I are you're born in 75?
Yeah, March 4th, 1975.
Yeah, I was born October 75.
Yeah, we're the same age.
We're the same age. That's what I thought so. And I knew we came from very similar backgrounds. So it's funny. Everything you said, it's almost, there's my intro. I'm not even joking. That's my same. I was 21 when I saw us in the theaters. I saw it in the theaters as well. One, because like you as a big film buff. So I saw everything in the theaters. It was almost insulting to watch things on VHS back then. You remember, like back in the days, like if I watched something on VHS, it was because I wasn't sure about the film, so I wasn't going to waste money at the theater, or it was an older movie that just I missed during its original run.
I got over pretty quick after I got my driver's license at 16.
Yeah,
I got over the fear of sitting in the theater by myself and watching a film. Were you a solo film goer? Yes.
I loved it. I did it all the time.
Me too. My buddies are like, what are you doing? You're only losers do that.
Well, I am a loser, but I still enjoyed it.
Okay, good. On. Because I saw this was one I remember seeing by myself. I don't know why, if my friends weren't interested in seeing it or whatever, but I found that getting over that hump of going to see movies by yourself for a film buff, it's one of the greatest things ever. It's just going to a movie, you're not worrying about anything but you and watching a movie. Still to this day, I'm the same.
I don't do as much today just because I would love to. It's just, family obligations, work.
Sure.
You know what it's like. But yeah, those early days, man, like pre-kids movie going experience for me, and I'm sure the same for you. I would rent movies by the dozens. I'd go to the old video store and get like 7 movies for $1 each type thing. Remember doing that too?
Yeah.
Oh, there's also something nostalgic and romantic about walking through the video store and picking up movies, or going to the new release and it's all taken. You're like, oh, I have to wait.
Yes,
I have to wait.
Just that wall of the same film, and all of them have the big case taken out from back of them, so it's gone. It's like,
I love it. Or you see the only one, like you're the last one. Yeah.
Or you go to the desk at Blockbuster and say, "Hey, do you got any more Courage Under Fire back there?" Not that.
Yeah, or it has somebody return it. It's in the return bin, but they haven't put it on the. Yeah.
Or I've actually seen it before. It's like, hey, can you check that back in so I can check it out? Kids today will never understand.
And the walk of shame through the beads to the adult section.
The beads. Yes, there were beads. There were those, sometimes the Western saloon doors, they were always separated somewhere.
They had like an alarm on them. Pervert.
Yes, exactly. Oh man, I'm sorry for the aside, but back in my hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee, I visit there. My parents are still there. And we went into this store that used to be a video store back when I was a teenager. And it's now like a clothing store. And I was in there with my mom and my sister. And back where you go, the fitting rooms in this store now is where the adult section used to be.
That's hilarious.
So my sister was trying something on. I was like, hey, just so you know, that's back where the adult section used to be when this was Movie Stop.
They probably haven't taken the cameras out yet. So
oh boy, jeez. But yeah, man.
Memory lane, fun stuff, guys. Well, let's get into the film itself. Courage Under Fire, released in '96, directed by Ed Zwick. What is your? Well, I mean, I kind of heard it already. So beyond. So yeah, we're the same age. You, of course, experienced Glory and Legends of the Fall before seeing this in the film. Have you followed Ed Zwick's career after Courage Under Fire, or like were you aware of it through his other films?
I tried to, but it seemed like Courage Under Fire is, to my knowledge, I know probably the last high profile thing he did was the Jack Reacher movie. After Courage Under Fire, I have probably not seen another Zwick movie in the theater.
You didn't see Last Samurai in the theater?
No, I did not.
Oh,
I saw
wow.
Last Samurai on DVD. It seems like lately he's done some streaming stuff. I'm not sure.
He's
about
semi-retired from big time filmmaking,
Yeah.
and I mean, anyone that follows his career, it's no secret he hasn't done a studio film since 2018.
Okay.
That will be my last episode. I mean, until he does another studio film, that
Yeah.
as of right now will be my last episode of this miniseries covering his films. He's worked on some TV since then. I mean, he's getting older too. He's not 35 anymore. He's 71 or 2, or so you just get older and you slow down a little bit and want to retire. And so the writer of this film was interesting. His name is Patrick Sheen Duncan. He's a graduate from Grand Valley State University. He experienced the Vietnam War firsthand, and so he wrote stories or films from that experience. He did a television miniseries called The Vietnam War Story in 87, with its sequel in 89 called The Vietnam War Story: The Last Days. He did a film which I actually would really like to cover one day for the last of the Action Heroes Podcast Network. It's called 84 Charlie Mopic. I've heard about this film even before I knew about this guy. I've heard of this Vietnam film. It came out in 89. It's an independent type film. He wrote and directed this film, Jared, and apparently it's one of the most realistic Vietnam films ever done.
Wow.
It has like 84 fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
What year was that?
89.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, in 96, Courage Under Fire. But that was his biggest commercial film, was this film, Courage Under Fire. He's done some other things, but Nick of Time, he co-wrote or wrote. That was that Johnny Depp film in 95. Mr. Holland's Opus, he wrote.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big movie.
That was a pretty big movie. So there you go. Those are his big type films. He's got a few under his belt, not 100, but not 3 either. So he's done some work. Before we get into the players of the film, the budget was $46 million, pretty hefty budget, and only the box office $100 million. So really, it doubled its budget. But as you know, with advertising fees and stuff like that,
Being released in 96, it might have turned a profit. They didn't spend as much back then as they do these days.
It did all right. It wasn't a failure in that sense. I mean, as we know, Ed Zwick went on to do other films on top of this one. What did you think of the music by James Horner in this film?
Well, one of the things actually that this sounds strange, but that drew me to the theater to see this is because I was a huge James Horner fan.
Sure.
And in the mid 90s, James Horner was hitting grand slams. He had Braveheart, he had Apollo 13. I loved his score to Legends of the Fall. His score for Glory is amazing. And so one of the things going into this movie that I was really anxious to hear was James Horner's score. Because, I mean, Ed Zwick movies, James Horner, there's always some magic there. But the score is actually very understated in this movie. It doesn't really come out big until the last few minutes of the movie. Because,
am I just podcasting with myself right now? Everything you're saying, I've literally have thought the same thing. I agree. His score came out at the end.
When I first saw it, I was a little disappointed because I was looking forward to going then to like the Sam Goody records and picking up the CD of the score. And I never bought this score. Yeah. It didn't stand out to me that much. I mean, it's fine. It's good for when you hear it in the film. I think it reinforces the emotion they're trying to get across, but it's just not thematic and big like his other scores around that same time.
I didn't think much of the score until the final moments of the film, the final act. It kind of came at the funeral scene, the medal ceremony, him returning home to his family, all that stuff. It really came into play at the end, and there were echoes, of course, of Glory. The same type of feeling of Glory. It wasn't the same chords and the same strings per se or compositions, of course, but it was very Glory-esque, and he tapped into that war hero type sound, and it was there at the end.
He got that Denzel single tear again. And then from when he's sitting in the parents' living room there with James Horner behind it with very similar music. So that was a little kind of a recurring theme for Zwick.
Yeah, the Zwick tear with Denzel. In his book, he did not mention the tear, though. That did not come up again.
Okay.
But he reinvestigated the tear, so he did it again.
Maybe he can just tear up on demand. Come on.
Good actors can, apparently. Good actors can. And Denzel certainly is. He's no slouch, Denzel, but we're going to get to him later. We'll get into him later. He's no slouch. We'll get into some of the other actors first. But James Horner, I totally agree with the soundtrack. It fulfilled what it needed to fulfill, but it didn't sound James Hornery until the end. And when it did come at the end, maybe that's what the point was, because then you felt it all at the end. Everything, all the good news comes at the end. But back to Glory, that film would be and of course Legends of the Fall. When those scores came in throughout the movie, especially Glory, like the moment the boys choir starts singing, and I start tearing up, man. It's like the moment the first, like throughout that whole film. So, this film wasn't designed necessarily to make you cry, though I did get emotional. I felt emotion at the end of the film, but not the same way you do when you watch Glory or Legends of the Fall. But that wasn't really the message of this film. We don't do a plot by plot on this podcast. It's kind of redundant because either you've seen the film, you know the film, or if you haven't seen the film, we'll discuss it in such a way that, for sure we're going to spoil things, but it's worth your time to go watch it regardless. But overall, Jared, do you just want to give a brief synopsis what happens in the film?
Denzel plays a colonel who was in the Gulf War as a tank commander. We find out very early on in the film that he is involved in a friendly fire incident against another tank who was commanded by a friend of his. And so he's responsible for his friend's death. And that haunts him. After he comes home, he is assigned to do some research on an event that happened. They're wanting to give a posthumous Medal of Honor to Meg Ryan's character, who was a medical Huey helicopter pilot in the Gulf War, who crashed, and her crew held off some Iraqis from. They had to hold their position and wait for rescue. So the story goes, Denzel then starts investigating this matter. He interviews the surviving crew of that chopper because Meg Ryan's character is killed. As he goes deeper into the investigation, he discovers there was maybe another friendly fire incident that occurred, and he starts to see discrepancies between the stories of the survivors, and it sets off alarm bells for him. And he goes down a couple of rabbit holes that there's plenty of twists and turns and some danger involved. And ultimately, he has to, in investigating this friendly fire incident, it sort of brings it back around full circle to his friendly fire incident and sort of a personal reckoning that happens towards the end of the film. It's really kind of a mystery movie. We see events play out multiple times, but with different perspectives, which I always think is kind of interesting.
When he interviews the witnesses, we, the viewer, see the events played out on film the way the witness is speaking it to Denzel's character. So then another witness is interviewed. We see the same events sort of played out differently. So they have to reshoot all the same event 4 different times with 4 different stories until we get to the truth.
Yes.
Clever. I thought that was clever.
Yeah, it's very clever. And once you find out that that's what they're doing, after they interview the first person, they go to the second person. You're like, hey, wait, that's different than the last time we saw it. I think the film is expecting you to have that light bulb moment going, oh, wait, something's not right here, because they're telling different stories and they're all hiding something.
But what's interesting is that the stories are different, but because we, the viewer, seen much of the same event, that's the way also memory can kind of work, is that, that is what kind of happened, but then a different weapon was used or a different timeline was used or something different was said. It's like, so we're seeing, it's not major differences. It's not like, oh, they weren't in a helicopter, they were in an army truck. It wasn't like that. It was just like, it's interesting how memory is an issue, but also what are we covering up? What are we not willing to talk about? And we're going to have to get into some spoiler stuff because there's some things we're going to need to talk to. So if you really don't want to get anything spoiled, I recommend watching it, and please come back. But if not, let's keep moving forward. Okay, so great synopsis, by the way. That was off the top of your head, so that was great. I put you on the spot. And Jared, the consummate professional from the Hyperspace Podcast of the 25th Century Podcast, he did amazing. Thank you for writing out, by the way. It does help.
No problem. Great job reading it, Brian.
Well, I know how to read. Okay. We have some great actors. This is a huge cast. We have some incredible actors here. We have Scott Glenn playing the news reporter for, I think, the Washington Post. I can't remember which paper it was. But what I liked about Scott Glenn's character playing this news reporter, journalist, this is the news journalism I grew up in the sense of the Walter Cronkite type news, meaning he was looking for the truth. There wasn't any spin. There was no politics here. I didn't know if he's liberal. I didn't know, was he CNN? Was he Fox? I don't really care.
Yeah.
I kind of miss the days of Here's a guy trying to get the
Just-
scoop.
Yeah, just an old school journalist.
Yes.
Yeah, who also was a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah, so he respected the forces. He respected the sacrifices the men and women have made in the military. But at the same time, he respects the truth, and people should be held accountable for the truth. And part of that truth, of course, was Denzel's. Now, he wasn't looking for the Medal of Honor truth that was going to be given to Meg Ryan's character. He was looking for the truth behind Denzel's involvement in the friendly fire, which the Army reported not as a friendly fire. Am I not right about that? Or?
That's correct. The Army lied about it.
I know friendly fire happens, and I know I've heard publicly, and I've heard of it, reported, so I'm aware of it. So we're aware that it happens. But maybe back then it might have been, even this was almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. Was it more hidden back then, or are they more open about now, or why was this one covered?
If we're talking about real life scenarios, the Army, that's certainly not something, or any branch of the military is going to want to, put out there and wear on their sleeve. Like, hey, you know how many people were killed by friendly fire last year? Oh man, so many, you wouldn't even believe it. I just don't think it's something they're interested in publicizing.
There's probably a stat. I'm sure we could. A better
Sure.
podcaster like me would have had these stats ready, but I'm sorry, I don't have them ready. I'm sure there's some sort of stat, but the reality is, so how I look at it is, obviously it wasn't malicious. Obviously, it's war. It's dark. It's smoky. This is still 1990s, early 90s. Whatever their radar systems or whatever they had to make themselves available to each other wasn't as strong as it is now, I bet. Crossfire, misfire, accident. It's a war accident. Obviously, he did not mean to fire on a friendly unit. And it's horrific. It's horrific, but it wasn't intentional.
Yeah. And something we find out in that final scene with Scott Glenn when he has the radio communications. This is something that we weren't privy to earlier in the movie.
That's right.
That Denzel all of a sudden says, every friendly, turn on your lights. That identifies the enemy tanks. And he is able to destroy all the enemy tanks after that happened.
This is Saber 6. Stop all tanks, turn on your lights. I say again, stop all tanks and turn on your lights.
Saber 6, Nav, what's happening out there?
Go to son. Tell her find me a target. Come on, son. Snap out of it. Find me a target. Patella, come on! Target! Lights on or off?
Off.
Fire!
On the way.
Sir! Fire!
Sterling, report status now.
Saber 6. Situation under control, General.
Which was his courage under fire. So even though he knew that in that moment he effed up and he effed up bad with his tanker there played by Sean Austin.
Samwise Gamgee was
Samwise Gamgee,
up
boy,
in that tank.
boy, he might not have been able to carry that ring, but he also can't fire a tank properly. poor Samwise.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Watching Sean Astin play this very small role in this film at the very beginning, but he's the one that fires the tank, though Denzel's character makes the order to fire, of course. He's the tank officer.
Yeah.
Watching him kind of cry to Denzel afterwards, you're like, oh, there it is. There's the Samwise. We get that little bit of a hint coming up.
Yeah.
And then not very much later, like what, 4 or 5 years later, he started the first
That
Lord
was
of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. Good for Sean. Okay. All right. So yeah, Scott did a great job. I don't know Scott Glenn from a lot of films. I knew he was in wasn't he in Backdraft, I think?
He was in Backdraft. He was in The Right Stuff.
You know what? I still haven't seen that film.
You haven't seen The Right Stuff?
I know.
Oh boy.
I know. Well, hey, look, we're not going to get to the movies I haven't. I've seen a lot of films, being a film guy, but you know how there's some films that just seem to escape you? That's just one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good one, especially if you're a space buff.
I am. I work in space right now in Canada. I work in the space program right now. Funny enough.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to say The Right Stuff is about Americans.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
So that's maybe why you haven't heard of it.
All American propaganda is blocked up here in Canada.
Okay, perfect. Who else we got here on the list?
Okay, well, we got Bronson
Pinchot.
He's the perfect stranger dude, right?
He is. Also in Beverly Hills Cop films. But Perfect Strangers is probably his biggest
Every
role.
time I see him not in a Perfect Stranger's role, he always seems like he's a cokehead. I don't know what it is about
Well,
him.
it's because of True Romance.
I
Remember
know,
that?
I know, but I just feel like he's always I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just, you know, some guys
Well-
have like a stoner personality. Like they have a stoner personality.
Yeah.
He just seems like he's always hopped up on coke, which may or may not have been the case. I'm not sure.
I instantly got from him in this movie a bit of a sleazebag vibe.
That's
don't
what I
know.
mean. Sleazebag. That's maybe the
Yeah.
coke up part. It's part of being a sleazebag. Yes. Not every coke user is a sleazebag, but every sleazebag is a coke user. I think that's the thing.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay. Now, he didn't have a very big part in the film. He's basically like a White House type advisor who helps
Yes.
set up Denzel's character with some other veterans to talk about their stories regarding a medal or whatever the
Yes.
experience was at the very beginning of the film. And that was it. Then he was never shown again in the film. Am I wrong about that after that meeting? at the
Yeah, he
beginning?
just popped up at the end during the medal ceremony.
Okay. Now, listen to this. This was from October 2009. Bronson gave a candid interview to the AV Club in which he made controversial comments about several of his former co-stars, including Denzel Washington. Regarding his experience working with Washington on the 1996 film Courage Under Fire, Bronson claimed that Washington was, quote, really abusive, end quote, to him and others on set. Specifically, Bronson stated, quote, Denzel was really abusive to me and everybody on that movie. And his official explanation was that his character didn't like me, but it was a dreadful experience, end quote. Yeah, it's weird because when you see the movie, there's no real indication in the film that the characters, yes, Denzel's character is this top-notch military type guy, old business type.
He was a bit dismissive towards his character, but he seems like that would be the way it is in real life.
Denzel?
No, that just how he's treating, these weird employees of the White House who are, I think Denzel's character would see them as bothersome.
Sure. And
And
now, do
just
you
like,
think,
hey, I got no time to talk to you.
do you think he was method acting?
It's possible. I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
There's more.
Okay.
So Bronson went on to describe Washington as, quote, vile, end quote, during the film process. It's important to note, however, Jared, that Bronson's comments sparked controversy, and he later expressed regret for his choice of words. So here we go. Here's the apology part. So he initially said these things. Of course, it gets back to like, whoa, you can't say that about Denzel. Who knows? His agents, whoever. He did initially say this, but he came back later with an apology. In a follow-up statement, Bronson said, quote, I regret my choice of words there and would like to amend my statement by saying I found his willingness to remain in character impressive, if occasionally worrying, end quote.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. I find the behind-the-scenes stuff interesting, but maybe it's a bit of both. Maybe Denzel was in character, so maybe Denzel didn't like Bronson, but just blamed. Oh, I'm just being a character.
That's very possible. Denzel, that was his movie. He was carrying things. Maybe he didn't have time to be just polite.
Yeah. So
I mean,
interesting side story though.
Denzel's a jerk. Got it.
You know what? We'll get to Denzel. We're actually got some stories on Denzel from the director Ed from his book. We'll end the episode with the book, as we've been doing on every episode. That's how we end each episode, with the words of Ed himself, and we'll comment on his comments regarding the actors or his time on the film. We also had, I don't know if did you ever watch The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know he was in this film until watching this, of course, many years later. Just like you, I saw it in the theaters, and I hadn't watched it again until preparing for this podcast episode. Seth Gilliam, he plays the preacher in The Walking Dead. He was the individual with stomach cancer in this film.
Yes. I had to look on IMDb, but when I was watching the movie, I was like, this guy is so familiar to me. And I was like, he's Gabriel in The Walking Dead. Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't age.
He looks very much the same as he did 28 years ago.
Yeah, good for him. He looks great. A little heavier in the face, maybe, but
sure,
for 25 years plus
still
later,
absolutely recognizable as Gabriel.
Not a very big role in the film, other than his big stomach cancer scene. Not much more to him, but yeah, this is nice to see an early role from him, and he went on, of course, great work on The Walking Dead. Now, do you know Michael
Moriarty?
Do you know him very well outside this film?
No, but he has done a lot of stuff. He's one of those character guys.
Yes.
There's
actually a documentary on those type of actors. What's it called again? It's something called like You Might Know Me From, or something like that. It's
it's something like that.
Yeah. He's one of those You Might Know Me From. You see his face, you don't know his name, but he's like, oh, he's that guy. But he did a great job playing Denzel's boss. I didn't know if you knew him from anything else. I don't really know him from anything else off the top of my head. But again, it's just somebody that comes up and you're like, oh yeah, that guy.
The thing that I knew him from was Law and Order.
Of course, that's where I knew him from. He was in seasons 1 through 4 of Law and Order. Of course,
early seasons.
It was bugging me. It's like, why does he look so familiar? I've Yeah, I've seen those seasons too. I used to watch all the time. I think I saw the first 9 or 10 seasons. They're like on season 50 now, but I can't.
Yeah, exactly. It's the show that will never stop in whatever iteration it's in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he was great. He was great playing Denzel's boss. I think he did a great measured role in that, but not much more to say to him. Now we're going to get to some of the main cast here. We've got, of course, Lou Diamond Phillips.
Oh, yeah.
Who played Staff Sergeant John Monfrays.
Spoiler alert, ultimately the antagonist of the piece.
Well, what did you think of his job in the film?
I remember when I saw it the first time, his performance kind of makes you uncomfortable a little bit. When they first start talking, there's a lot of tension between him and Denzel. It's unspoken and sort of under the surface, and it's covered over with these fake niceties. Hey, I'm going to get a soda. Can I get you a soda? No, I'm okay. I'm just going to work out here.
So, talk to me about 25 February.
25 February, yes, sir. I had some phys rehab time. Got into boxing.
Want a soda pop, son?
No, sir. No, I'm good.
25 February.
So.
But there's a tension there. And I think I remember when I saw it, I was like, something's up with him. There's something wrong with this guy. And then, of course, as the story plays out, he goes off the rails, or goes on the rails, I should say, on the rails right into a train.
Yeah, what did you think of his suicide?
I thought it was well done.
That whole scene was great.
Intense when he's holding the 45 in Denzel's face. Exit this vehicle, get out of here. And he's like, no, you don't want to do this.
I strongly urge you to dismount the vehicle, sir.
So immediately, okay, something. And at this point in the film, we don't know what has happened yet. And we're like, what's going on here? Why is he doing this?
Yeah, we don't know what he's done just yet. We
but
just know that he's guilty of something, but we're going to find out later from a different character of what he actually did.
But I thought he was well played. I think Lou Diamond Phillips is a solid actor.
Yeah, love him.
He's still doing quite a bit. I mean, of course, he in the 80s and early 90s, he was a big heartthrob and very famous movie star. But he's one of those guys who's sort of settled into smaller roles these days. He's still working. Yeah,
he's great. He's one of my favorites out there. I don't follow everything he's in, but I've seen a lot of stuff that he's in. One, because one of these days I'm going to do a Western podcast. I'm going to do it still, but Young Guns. Yeah, of course. I mean, did you not like Young Guns 1 and 2 when that came out when we were teenagers?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I just love those films. I fanboy on them the same way somebody might fanboy on Star Wars or something like that. I fanboyed about Westerns. I know I'm weird, like Tombstone, Young Guns 1 and 2.
Westerns are fantastic.
Yeah, I love them. I followed his career because of his performance to that. So when you see actors from a film that you love do other things, your interest is piqued. You're like, oh, how are they going to do this? He was also in a TV show I quite enjoyed on 5 seasons called Longmire. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
I heard about Longmire. Yeah,
it's a great show. Great show. He was on that.
The sheriff and
he played Henry Standing Bear on that, but he was the sheriff's friend. He did a great job on that. So it's just great to see him do other stuff, and he's been actively working in the industry. He's 62, so he's not old. He's not young, but he's still got a few years left in him to do some acting, and good for him. So yeah, he's great.
It seems like to me that seeing him in this movie in a supporting role, this started, I think, maybe the end of his run as a leading man type, as a big star. I mean, he's came out with La Bamba 7 or 8 years before. And
it's weird that he didn't do, you're right. Yeah. You kind of look at his filmography, and none of the films that I'm looking at here, just from a quick scroll, have anything to do with him being the main actor.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, because even he won a Blockbuster Entertainment Award for supporting actor for this film.
Well, I mean, he does a great job in it, for sure.
But I wonder why he I don't. Yeah, maybe this is. You know what? It could be a personal choice, and this is the thing that I think we don't know what because he's been steadily working like hundreds of roles between TV and movies, so he's very hireable. Like people don't seem to have a problem hiring the guy.
Yeah.
There are some actors, and I don't know if this is a bad place to be. I sometimes wonder what kind of actor would I be had I been thrown in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks, or do you want to be a Lou Diamond, meaning or Michael Moriarty, meaning you work, you're in the industry, you're having fun. Like this is your day at work, you're having a good time, but you can go shopping at the grocery store still.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's the trajectories different actors take because he's sort of settled into this supporting actor status. He probably has the more freedom to do what he wants.
And you're never blamed for a project that fails. When you're when you're the supporting actor, you never hear let's just pretend the next Mission Impossible film fails. Let's just say,
sure. I mean, and that's the thing that Tom Cruise has to deal with. And and
even the supporting actors, they don't have to hear about it.
Correct. And guys like even still today, Harrison Ford, he's never gone back to B player status. Even in his 80s, the poor guy still has to, headline Indiana Jones and now Marvel movies. And it's, it's like
he's the Red Hulk now, apparently.
Yeah. And it's just, man, I wonder if Harrison Ford thinks, well, maybe when I finished doing Indy back in 1989, I should have just taken these meatier supporting roles. But, that probably didn't pay the bills. It's interesting to see the trajectory of these actors.
Yeah, Lou Diamond did a great job. And that whole him being a total kind of dick and his behavior and what happened in those final moments with Meg Ryan's character, which we'll talk about when we talk about her character. Yeah, very well acted, very intense, problematic, and then a painful, tragic ending to his life. Yeah, very realistic ending to his life. Okay, let's get to Matt Damon. We should state Matt Damon was 22 in this film. This is kind of his first big film. He was noticed by Francis Ford Coppola, and that's how he got the job for a year later for
The Rainmaker.
The Rainmaker, thank you. Which I saw in the theaters. I saw The Rainmaker in theaters because at the time there, Jared, not only was I a big film buff, I saw a lot of stuff in the theaters, but I was also a big John Grisham novel reader. So I read the novel and then saw the film in the theater.
It's interesting that you say this because this is the first time that I remember taking notice of, because this is before Matt Damon was Matt Damon.
He'd been in some films, but he was in School Ties. He was even that movie Geronimo, American Legend, if you can believe that, 3 years previous.
Yeah, Jason Patric was in that, I think.
Yeah, Jason Patric, but I knew that film because of Jason Patric and West Study more than Matt Damon, of course.
But,
this was his first big film, though, yeah.
What really caught my attention on him was the weight loss, that he transformed his body from the Desert Storm scenes. He looks very much the same as he does, like, say, in Saving Private Ryan.
Very Matt Damon-ish.
Yeah, he looks like Matt Damon. And then you see this skin and bones guy who pops up later in the film. And I remember watching this movie going, is that the same guy? Holy cow. It made me just think, well, this guy's got some Robert De Niro Raging Bull thing going on where he's probably a very healthy 170 pounds in the war scenes. And now this guy's probably $140 sitting here with his skin and bones talking about shooting up heroin between his toes.
Yeah, he really went method on that, and he lost 40 pounds in 100 days. So when he came back to do those extra scenes for the future Ilario, the character he played was Ilario, to play those scenes, the director Ed Zwick was like, "What are you? You're killing yourself. Stop! You need to eat some. This is silly. What are you doing?" And he didn't. It took Matt Damon almost 2 years to fully recover from what he did to his body. He almost died for real.
It certainly made me pay attention to him. And
it worked.
And when he popped up big in Good Will Hunting a couple years later, I was like, that's the guy from Courage Under Fire. And also, if you tie this back to The Rainmaker, Matt Damon was he was big news where I grew up because for prep for The Rainmaker, which took place in, I believe, Memphis, Tennessee, or in the South somewhere. I can't remember.
It did. It was, it was Memphis State University.
Well, he lived in my hometown of Knoxville for a few months tending bar. He wasn't like a superstar yet, but
No.
I remember reading in like the local paper, like Matt Damon, who appeared in last year's Courage Under Fire, is now tending bar at this place in town. And I was like, well, holy crap, that's kind of cool. But, you know, I didn't make it a point to rush out and order a drink from him. But it was like a local paper interviewing this character actor, but that I remembered him from Courage Under Fire. And I was like, holy crap, that's kind of cool. But
Now, yeah, I didn't follow his career after Courage Under Fire. Did it go anywhere? Or
yeah, I don't know. You don't really hear much from him anymore. But I think he's friends with Ben Affleck or something.
I think he's friends with Daredevil. That's all I've heard.
That's all I know about it. So Matt Damon he was kind of top of mind there for a lot of people in my hometown for a little while. I just remember watching that movie thinking, man, that kid's really good.
Yeah. And he is good. He's actually a good actor. Like,
Yeah.
I enjoy his films. I probably have seen the majority of his films. What about you?
I would say so.
70%, 60 to 70%?
Yeah, probably
of his films?
70%, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, I think the last big one was Oppenheimer that he was in.
What did you think of that film?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not one
I'm boring.
Well, I mean,
Weird,
it's not,
because I hate that. I'm not like that. I don't mean it like
it's for me. It's not a movie, you know, I'm going to throw on a Sunday afternoon and be like, hey, I'm in the mood to watch Oppenheimer. Let's go.
but I like talkie movies. It's weird. I like this is a talkie movie. Courage Under Fire maybe has almost the same amount of quote unquote action as Oppenheimer, the big bomb scene, but in the sense of like I don't need an action film to be engaged. Like, I'm not 8 years old. I like talkie movies. I've always enjoyed dialogue driven, like A Few Good Men, for example, is a good example. I enjoyed dialogue driven films. I found the Oppenheimer direction, editing, I found it, I don't know. I mean, yes, it was all acted incredible. I get that, but there's something and it felt boring, especially after the bomb explosion. I admit, I was like, okay, I really don't care what happens to this guy. They should have tightened it up a lot, but whatever. That's just sidebar, but
Fair enough.
yeah.
Different strokes.
Well, I mean, I know it's incredibly filmed and I know it's very well done and yada, yada, yada. I just, at the same time, I would rather watch Courage Under Fire, I think, again, than Oppenheimer. What does that tell you? I don't know. All right. So Matt Damon, good job. Good job in Oppenheimer, Matt. Okay. Now let's get to the second credited top actor of this film. We're going to end with Denzel. Let's just talk about Meg Ryan right now. What is your history or your fandom, if any, of Meg Ryan?
Oh, man. Huge crush on Meg Ryan. When I was
Sure.
especially probably around this age.
So she's 36 in this film, FYI.
Yeah. I loved Meg Ryan. I mean, the first thing that really I took notice of her in was When Harry Met Sally.
What scene did you like about that one? What was the scene that stood out for you there?
Oh, take your pick. They all involve the restaurant, of course. I just thought she was like adorable. Like
She is adorable.
yeah, just kind of a girl next door kind of cuteness. I just really had a crush on her. And
It's fair.
in this movie, you know, I gotta say, on the revisit,
I wonder if we're going to say the same thing. Are you reading my notes? What's going on here?
I don't know, but maybe I'm going to say something.
maybe you're
different.
going to say something different. Please go on, please.
I didn't buy the accent, and the accent goes along with. I don't think I bought her as this hardened warrior.
Can I finish your sentiment? Can I be
Sure.
a little bit less diplomatic?
Sure.
She was horrible. No, she was, if I'm being honest, objective. Yes, she's cute. Yes, she's Meg Ryan. And so watching this film, I haven't seen the Meg Ryan film in a while. I admit, she hasn't really done very many in a while.
Yeah.
However, she actually hasn't done that many movies. She did the majority of her movies pre-2000.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen this film in 26 years. I saw it in 28 years. I saw it in 96. It's now 2024. I hadn't seen Meg Ryan in a while. I haven't seen this film in a while. I've seen Meg Ryan films. I've seen You Got Mail. I've seen Proof of Life.
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah.
City of Angels, IQ, Flesh and Bones, Sleep in Seattle, Prelude to a Kiss, The Doors. So I've never thought much of her. I think she's fine. I think she's easy to watch. She's cute. She's an actress.
Yeah.
You know, I never go to a Meg Ryan film, but when she's in a film, it's Meg Ryan, right? I never
Sure.
think much of it. But watching this performance where she played Captain Karen Emma Walden, who's going to win the awarded the Medal of Honor
Yes.
after her death, her acting in this was absolutely horrendous. And I don't know if it was And I'm not blaming Ed. Ed Zwick is an amazing film director. That being said, he's an incredible director, and he's taken on some big personalities like Denzel, Matthew Broderick, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I don't imagine Meg Ryan was an issue that way, and his book doesn't mention anything like that, and he's not afraid to say that. I think when he doesn't really talk too much about an actor or an actress in the book so far that I've discovered, it's just because it's a non-issue. They just worked at their job, went home, nothing to write home about. She was horrible in this film, and it was really unfortunate because I think it took it down a notch because Denzel, we'll get to him, and we're talking about Matt Damon, Lou Diamond Phillips, the other two top actors of the film, right? They did not dial or phone it in. Matt Damon literally lost 40 pounds. Lou Diamond Phillips did a great job playing the dick and the a-hole of the film, did a great job doing that because he's just one of the nicest guys. So playing against type, doing that kind of film role. And then, of course, Denzel. So I was watching this with the accent, totally agree about the accent. And I'm like, this is a fake person. Like, this person doesn't exist. Why can't they just make Meg Ryan talk? Like, Denzel just talked. Matt Damon just talked.
Exactly. We're not, you're right. It's not based on a true story. So this was a choice that was made. She needs to be like Southern.
I told you. Righty can't be moved. Right, Ilario? It's just tension, asshole. It doesn't mean shit. Well, that would be great if this was a democracy, but it isn't. We stay with Righty. I wouldn't risk your life. I won't risk his. No surrender. And I say, I heard enough of that shit. I am in command here.
I think for me it started with the accent, but, I think overall the part was miscast.
Exactly. It was totally miscast. I think, I hate to say this, and I don't think I don't know how much he's in charge of casting because they are casting people that I'm sure the director has. I'm sure the director has.
Oh, yeah, they have say.
They have say. So, because the chemistry in the actors would have say as well. But she's not tough. Some actresses and actors, of course. But, when a female has to play against type, because that's the whole point of this film. Let's just be clear. She is a female officer. Yes. And she's leading the guy like Lou Diamond's character, who's a tough guy. I don't take orders from a female. That was the whole issue there. And so you kind of have to have someone. Every time she spoke, when she was yelling orders, when she's yelling at the soldiers, I feel like, hey, pretend to be an army person. And I was like, no.
It wasn't authentic.
It
was, okay, you need to go over there and do this. And
there you go.
First of all, there's a lot of weird things happening there because, one, I know Meg Ryan doesn't talk like that. Two, I'm from the South, and that's not a great affectation of the Southern accent.
Yeah, it wasn't necessary. That's what makes it even worse. It wasn't necessary.
And there were all these other weird choices. There's that scene where she starts crying. And she's like, no, it's not. I'm not scared. It's just tension.
Maybe we slip by him in the dark.
I told you. Righty can't be moved. Right, Ilario?
That long, any movement might kill him. Then again, he may die just lying here.
You see there? Rady will never make it. I say we go. Oh, great. Great, the captain's crying.
It's just tension, asshole. It doesn't mean shit.
And I'm like, what? What is this?
Yeah, it was odd dialogue in combination with an odd. Yeah, why make the character? You could have just had her. I would have. No offense to Ed, but maybe in this moment, instead of having her just cry the way she did, I maybe would have had her put her hands in her hand and just like.
Because
this, like really angry look, or just type of. Well, it's okay to crack this war. Like you got bullets flying around you, your helicopters crash, you're being surrounded by the Iraqi soldiers, the enemy soldiers, whoever the country. You're gonna probably be shot to death soon, and so of course it's frightening. Men have cried in war. Don't kid yourself.
Of course, but I think this was done, as you said earlier, to give Lou Diamond Phillips an in to be an a-hole.
Yeah, I know
because he's the one who's like. What the hell are you doing? Are you crying?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? It just was a weird choice.
Well, that whole scene, the truth scene, I could say the fourth story regarding the whole what happened here, folks. Spoiler. So here's what happened. So basically, they're running out of ammo, and her character wanted him to hand over his weapon. Do you remember? I can't remember. What was the reason? Was it just to maintain the ammo, or was he being weird with the weapon? Because she was telling him, "Give me your weapon." Because he was going to fire it off more than she wanted him to.
I say we make for the chopper now.
And I say, I heard enough of that shit.
You don't have to go with us, Captain. We don't even need your permission.
I am in command here!
Well, maybe not anymore.
Give me the saw, Monfreeze. I can't stop you from running, but you're not taking our firepower with you.
You're not taking away my weapon.
Yes, I am.
There's no way you're taking away my weapon, cunt.
Section 28J, Code of Military Justice. Mutiny. An offense punishable by death.
Yeah.
So basically, she wanted his weapon, which
Sure. And
now, this is where I don't want to play like it was her fault, but I will say from the events of the film, the story, and what happened with the truth, they were both at fault.
I think that the deal was the Iraqis were not actively attacking them. And she thought Lou Diamond Phillips was going to open up with his machine gun and bring a lot of hell down upon them.
She wanted to wait till morning or something like that.
Yeah. And so that's why she wanted his gun.
She points her pistol at him, saying, "Give me your weapon." When she did that, I'm watching this. I'm in the military myself. I'm only in the Navy, but I'm in the military, and I'm just thinking to myself, "Boy, you better be certain. If you ever pointed your weapon at your own troop, that's pretty bad, man."
But she invokes mutiny. She does say something about what you're doing is mutiny, and she quotes some regulation, and she goes, "I can shoot you for that."
I looked up that military justice 28 Charlie or whatever it was. I actually looked it up. It doesn't exist. There is a military justice, of course, whatever manual thingamajiggy, but it didn't exist, unfortunately. Yeah. So when she points the weapon, forces him to hand it over, and then she has her weapon. Basically, what happened with folks here, she points the weapon at him, but over his shoulder, an Iraqi soldier comes over his shoulder. So she lifts it just a smidgen to fire at the soldier that's going to shoot down at them, and then he fires at her, thinking that he got fired at, and then hits her in the gut. And then what happens? They win that little mini firefight. She survives the night with a gunshot wound in her stomach. The following day, she didn't want to leave. She wanted to. Why didn't she want to leave again?
You mean why she didn't want to leave during the night?
No, with the rescue in the morning. The helicopters had come down. They had put the flares out or the smoke bombs out.
Well, I think at that point, because this is where the M16 comes into play. And they talk about the M16 very conspicuously through a lot of this movie. Denzel's curious who had the M16 and everybody's being real weird about it. Oh, no, I think the M16 was out of ammo. I don't know about that M16. Well, we find out at the end, she takes the M16.
That's right. And she provides cover fire.
And I think what's happening is she knows she's dead.
Right.
I don't think she had any intention of leaving. She wants to cover their retreat.
Okay, so she's sacrificing her life.
Yes, because she knows that this gut shot is probably not survivable, and she's just going to cover them while they get to the helicopters.
The men get to the rescue copter. They're inside, and Monfreeze, played by Lou Diamond Phillips, tells the pilot there, like, they ask, "Where's Walden? Where's your captain?" And he's like, "Well, she's dead." So then they napalm the area because of that, but we don't know she's dead just yet because of the gunshot wound. So I think the napalm killed her. I don't think it was the gunshot wound at that time.
I think you're right. And that's even something that Denzel is talking to Matt Damon about towards the end when they're sitting there by the lake. He's like,
She was probably killed by small arms before the napalm ever hit. Either way, she never could have survived that stomach wound.
You think that matters?
No.
That's not what we're talking about. So, Matt Damon, he's trying to sort of to justify, I think, what happened there. Like, well, she was already dead, but that's sort of not what they're investigating, because they were continuing to hear the M16 be fired while Lou Diamond Phillips is saying, "No, she's dead." And then they're like, "Well, who's firing the M16?" That's why the M16 keeps coming up. And they make a point saying the M16 has a very distinctive sound when it's being fired.
Right. So she's still alive and well. Yeah.
Yes, she's still alive when they get out of there.
Yeah. So that's the tragedy of this film, folks, right there, that she was under fire, even though she might have cried the night before. She was courage under fire for the rescue attempt. She provided her men cover, gave the ultimate sacrifice ultimately, and maybe even possibly a bit murdered before dying from the gunshot wound that she received.
Correct.
So either way, that guy killed her. She was killed either way by napalm or gunshot wound by Monfrese's character. But at the end of the day, I think Jared and I are on the same page. Meg Ryan was a big miscast. She was given an improper accent for no reason. It didn't add to the story. I think it just made her seem more innocent and charming, I guess, that she's from the South. You know, those girls from the South are just more innocent and charming than those girls from the North. And she was given arbitrarily, red hair. I don't know. Make her seem less Meg Ryan-y, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it was a way to change her looks. She had red hair, South accent. Just give me a blonde hair Meg Ryan. I think the film would have been a little bit better had she just been a normal blonde hair Meg Ryan without the accent.
Sure.
It would have helped. It would have helped.
Yeah.
The star of the film, second time that Denzel's now worked with Ed. The second time. He's a little bit older now, both in the movie industry and, of course, in life. He's 42 now at the time of this film. What do you think of Denzel's performance overall in this film?
I thought he did great. You know, I could watch Denzel Washington read the phone book. Everything I've seen him in, I've enjoyed. His Equalizer movies are fun, revenge, thrillers, and he's great to look at in those. For many years, I've enjoyed watching him pretty much in anything. So
Agreed. Yeah, if he's in a film, even if the film might be subpar or whatever it might be, Denzel's never boring to watch.
I know a lot of people are pooping on Gladiator 2, but when I saw the trailers and I saw Denzel in that role, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm going to go watch that. Denzel owning a bunch of gladiators back in Roman times. Are you kidding me? I'll be there.
I trust Ridley Scott. Here's another director I've actually thought about doing was Ridley, to be honest with you. That's been once I'm not even joking. Ridley, Michael, Ed. These are all ones from my childhood. These are the directors. The only one I won't do is Steven Spielberg.
Spielberg's kind of been done to death.
That is part of the reason, but also I'm not
you're not a big Spielberg guy?
I love Indiana Jones films. He's got a style and a flavor that does not speak to me the way.
Yeah. I'm definitely not that.
It's almost like you're not allowed to say that about him, and I think that's not really.
No, it's fair.
Either.
Look, you don't like Steven Spielberg, you don't like Christopher Nolan, Ryan. It's okay.
No, I like Christopher Nolan.
It's okay to admit it, Brian. Listen, you just watch your other. Stop it. You just do your Ed Zwick podcast and leave those guys alone.
I love Christopher Nolan, but you're right. Those films have been done to death on podcasts. I don't think the Ed Zwick or the Michael Manns have, and I'm trying to offer something different to the podcasting world. But Steven Spielberg, he's just interesting to me. There are films that I've seen the majority of his films. Don't get me wrong, but they're always just so heavy. It's hard to explain. I don't know what it is. It started with E.T. I mentioned that on the last.
Yeah.
podcast.
I heard your anti-ET rant. He goes, I don't know, man. He's laying there in the creek like a fish. He looks terrible. And listen. I'm right there with you. When I was a kid, me and you are the same age.
Right.
We were 7 when we saw that movie.
Yeah, it scarred me.
It's scary. It's scary.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe.
I mean, I always made sure that the shower curtain was closed in my bathroom because I was convinced that E.T. was laying in my bathtub all white and gross.
You know what I'm talking about. Yes. When you're an 8-year-old kid seeing a penis in the river, a bloated dead penis in the river.
It's
arms and legs.
It's scary stuff. Although I have since come to really enjoy.
I just can't get around ET. I can't get around to it.
First time I saw my father cry was he had a Denzel single tear in the movies when I saw it.
Was he getting whipped? Was he getting?
No. He was sad at the end of ET.
I cried for joy when he got on the UFO. Good.
Come on.
That's the best part of the whole film.
Listen, I'm not gonna participate in this anti-ET tirade that you've been on lately. I love E.T.
Fine, we'll go back to Denzel. We'll both agree that we love Denzel.
Okay.
Yeah,
Denzel.
He's an incredible actor. I have because of Glory. It's the first film I saw Denzel in, of course, was Glory. And I've been a fan since. And I'm looking forward to Gladiator 2. And I'm tired of everyone bitching and moaning about sequels and remakes. It's done well. It's done well. Stories have been told and told and told again 1,000 times. Films are any different. It's such a cop-out to say because it's a sequel, it sucks. Now, sequels can suck, but if it's a good sequel, it's a good sequel. Ridley Scott is a good director. I trust him. The trailer looks promising. It looks fun. It looks like it's revisiting a lot of the same hits the Gladiator hit with different characters. I'm all for it. Maybe Gladiator 2 is not the best title. They could have called it Gladiator
And then like a subtitle or something.
Subtitle, like I think the two probably isn't the best part. I find that odd.
Yeah, it's kind of on the nose.
It is
like,
on the nose, and I'm surprised by that because they call it Alien Romulus, for example. They should have done something like that for Gladiator.
But just think about, really, there's not that many movies these days, well, aside from the ongoing Creed films, that just use the Roman numeral. Like now, a sequel is called this, then a subtitle.
Well, maybe because it's a Roman story. They're obligated.
They wanted to use the Roman numeral. Yeah, there you go.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm going to see it. I'm sure it's going to be. I doubt it's going to be a bore fest or stupid. I'm sure it's going to be just fine.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm not saying Ridley Scott hits a home run every time. I think he definitely has some stinkers in there. But
don't get me started on The Martian.
The Martian is not one of the stinkers, Ryan.
You know what?
Hey, listen, Matt Damon, also another Matt Damon movie.
I know it is, and that movie, it was boring. I'm not a big fan of single person.
So you don't like people talking?
Would you?
Listen. Okay, I'm sorry.
Even Castaway is kind of hard. Watching one person try to escape stuff, it gets kind of like, I don't know why. I get bored.
Okay.
I'd like to see more interaction with with other like characters. It's hard to watch the single person rescue stuff. Castaway, Martian, that kind of stuff. Though well filmed, well acted, I get it, but it's not very engaging. Anyways, okay.
Yeah.
Denzel, incredible in this film. We're going to get to the book right now because I think it's going to tie into some Denzel stories, and we've already spoken a lot on Denzel, of course, with the Glory episode. Check that out, folks, if you haven't already. And Jared, of course, he just likes Denzel, so we'll just All right, so this first clip, just the beginning of how Denzel and Ed came across the script for Courage Under Fire.
We were about the same age, both raising young families, both trying to maintain marriages while balancing the demands and pleasures of blossoming careers. After winning the Oscar, Denzel was a shooting star. In short order, he did Malcolm X, Philadelphia, and Crimson Tide. I rebounded after my time in the wilderness with Legends of the Fall and My So-Called Life. We even ended up indulging our success, renting little houses next to each other in Malibu, where I got to know Pauletta and their kids. One day, in 1995, my assistant told me there was a call from someone I didn't know named Joe Singer. Joe was a familiar Hollywood archetype, with no background to speak of in film, but what he lacked in experience he made up for in chutzpah. He told me he had a script that Denzel wanted to do. What he didn't tell me was that he'd already called Denzel and told him I wanted to direct it. By the time Denzel and I made plans to meet for lunch, it had all the makings of a done deal, except Denzel had no intention of doing the movie.
Well, that was it. Just a fun little beginning of how the script came into both their possessions, where they were kind of lied to. Both parties were told the other person was good to go.
Oh, wow. That's
ballsy.
That's crazy.
All right, so the next clip is them talking about the script.
Courage Under Fire was written by Patrick Sean Duncan, an accomplished screenwriter and Vietnam vet. Within minutes of sitting down, Denzel didn't hold back his critique of the screenplay. The lead character was mopey. His investigation was passive. His marriage didn't feel real. I couldn't disagree with anything he said. And while the Rashomon storytelling device was compelling, looking at the incident through the varied perspectives of the soldiers, the characterizations were two-dimensional and flat. There was no point trying to convince Denzel of its merits. "So why do you want to do it?" he asked. "I don't yet," I said. "But I think there's a way to make it into an interesting character study."
Okay, so what I like about this, he had the same, funny enough, with Glory, where he was given that script by Kevin Jarre, and it was the same idea. Like, all the beats were there. This is where the characters are. They're here now. They're doing this now. This is happening now. And Ed felt the same thing, that the characters were sort of two-dimensional, no heart, no emotion. And Ed has this ability that he's able to incorporate or flesh out characters to make them more human, have more heart, where we as a viewer just are drawn to them a little bit more. And that's something he seems to bring to these films, Jared. I don't know if you are feeling that too about Ed, or...
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I mean, I'm obviously not familiar with the source material or the draft of the script that they're talking about, but I did not feel when watching the movie that these characters were necessarily two-dimensional. I thought Lou Diamond Phillips, through his performance, there was some sort of, underlying menace to him, but certainly not like a mustache twirling
Right.
villain or anything like that. Whatever problems they had before they agreed to jump on this, it seems that they definitely worked them out. To speak to Denzel's comments about how his family didn't feel like a real family, his wife and kids, that was very well done. It's not a huge story point, but it is a little bit. He's an alcoholic. He's always down in these small, mini bottles of scotch. He calls.
You're
his
not really an
wife.
alcoholic when you just drink small bottles.
Okay, small bottles doesn't count.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
true.
Okay, well, I take that back. But he calls his wife, and he's like, "Look,
I got a pint of scotch here in a paper bag. I don't want to drink any of it. I better go, baby.
Don Boiler called.
Jesus. I better go.
Nat, talk to me.
I can't.
Why not?
I can't.
Bullshit. Bull. Talk to me.
it's those kind of things that really kind of sell him as a real person, I think, in the movie."
And that drinking comes from PTSD. And Ed talks about, I don't think I have the clip, but he talked about it just before what I'm about to share with you, his studying of PTSD. And even back then in the 90s, Jared, PTSD was still kind of a new thing, that term, post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah. They still kind of referred to it as shell shock. People just thought, oh, it's loud explosions and war. But obviously PTSD is much more than just explosions. We're very aware of what it is today, but it's still kind of a new concept even in the 90s. So Ed talked about how he delved into that. It would add that to the characters.
Denzel put down his fork. "I'll do it," he said.
Ed told Denzel about PTSD and what it can do to the characters and how they could flesh out these characters with that knowledge. That's when Denzel said, okay, I'll do it. That's why.
Okay.
I couldn't help but laugh. The funny thing was, I honestly had no expectation of convincing him. I wasn't selling or pitching, just speaking passionately about something that interested me. I was overjoyed at the thought of making another movie with him.
He didn't think he was going to convince Denzel with the PTSD talk. He was just talked about what he's learned about PTSD, and after that, that's when Denzel said, "Okay, I'll do it now. I'll do this. Yeah. I'll do the movie."
Probably gave him that aspect of the character. Gave him some, there's some meat on the bone.
Basically, when it came down to negotiating the fees for Denzel, of course, at this time, mid-90s, he's drawing a little bit more money than he did back in Glory.
Yeah,
the studio was saying this amount. His agent was saying this amount. They finally negotiated whatever the amount was, but Denzel says, "No, I want $1 million more than whatever that number was." Well, it turned out they gave it to him, whatever that number was. They gave him another $1 million, but he ended up donating that $1 million to his friend at the time, Nelson Mandela, to his cause.
Oh, interesting. Another $1 million that he was just giving away.
Yeah, that he gave to Nelson Mandela. I forget what the charity was, but yeah, I thought that was pretty cool of Denzel to do that. He asked for another $1 million, but he just rolled it over and gave it to Nelson Mandela's cause.
Well, hopefully we'll all get to that spot someday, Ryan, where we can just ask for that extra $1 million to hand off to someone else.
I'm not going to give it to Nelson Mandela, though. I'll tell you that.
Well, he's dead now. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Is he, though, or is that just a Mandela effect? Maybe he's alive again.
Geez. Oh, geez.
Do a side episode right now on the Mandela effect. What's your favorite? Okay. Okay, now we're going to hear Ed's casting of Meg Ryan talk here.
And I offered Meg Ryan the part of the heroic chopper pilot whose Medal of Honor Denzel's character is investigating. Like everyone, I'd been enchanted by Meg's work as a comedienne, but I'd also been intrigued when she ventured out of her comfort zone in movies like Promised Land and Flesh and Bone, and the strong but unfortunately titled When a Man Loves a Woman. After a great meeting, she said yes to playing Captain Karen Walden.
That was it. That's how he got Meg. He was impressed by her previous roles of drama. No talk about her accent, unfortunately.
No, he does say, though, he's like, I'm definitely casting against type. Maybe that wasn't the best decision.
I don't think it was. I think he was hoping for something, but he didn't get it. He doesn't mention the book, but I bet you put a gun to Ed's head. He probably said it could have been better. I don't think he could watch that film today and think she did a good job. There's no way, objectively, he could say that. It's one of those things you don't have anything nice to say.
Then he just doesn't say.
Say it, yeah.
Well, he's classy.
He's a good guy. The next talk here is about the supporting cast.
I cast Matt Damon, Seth Gilliam, Tim Guinea, and Lou Diamond Phillips as our Army medevac helicopter crew. Scott Glenn also did great work as an investigative journalist pressing Denzel's character for the truth. It bears repeating. No film is any better than its supporting cast. When they're boldly drawn and capable of holding the screen, their strong, distinctive voices and oppositional points of view highlight the lead actors the way great orchestration of a musical score can support its central themes.
There you go. Just reiterating again what he's done in other films. Of course, Legends of the Fall is a great example of that. Glory as well, the two other great films he did. Well, all of his films, they always have a great supporting cast. All of the supporting cast of Ed's films are just, they're fleshed out. You feel like you know a little bit of their stories. He has a great job of, nobody feels wasted or stupid at all. This is just a plot device character.
Yeah.
Now, this next clip, I forgot to write down what it is. So let's just listen to it cold, shall we?
Sure.
Could be dangerous. Here we go.
Meg had never fired a weapon before, but she gamely joined the boys on a confidence course, a training ground made up of obstacles and moving targets designed to promote what the military calls confidence in self and team. When we did our improvs to create the kind of banter and camaraderie the group would have developed, everything took on new energy and urgency because they were forced to raise their voices above the din. Later, while rehearsing a gun battle, Meg came up with what I considered to be one of the best lines in the movie. I immediately put it in the script. In a single sentence, she epitomizes her dilemma and her fortitude. Although gravely wounded, she keeps on fighting. When it looks like she might not be able to carry on, Matt Damon's character tries to get her to lie down. "Are you sure you can do this, ma'am?" he asks. She stares up at him and growls.
I gave birth to a 9-pound baby, asshole! I think I can handle it.
That was a Meg Ryan improv line. I guess they kept it.
Yeah.
I guess Ed liked it. He liked it.
Well, I mean, that is definitely a line I remember from the movie.
Right.
So it stands out.
I know in war films, and I know good war films do this, and it's interesting. They have this. I know Private Ryan did this. I know other war films have done this, where they have the actors do this sort of boot camp type stuff to kind of get the mindset of teamwork and grit. And it sounds like they did that for this film as well. So it's kind of cool to hear that they went through that together.
Yeah, I like that. That's always a highlight on some of those war films you're talking about. I'm thinking currently of Band of Brothers. There's a whole documentary that was shot for that Blu-ray release. It's just about those guys, and their experience in boot camp and that thing. And it's really cool.
I would like Band of Brothers better if it wasn't produced by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, apparently so. And then he didn't put E.T. in it.
I really did like episode 4.
Why was E.T. there in Normandy? E.T. wasn't in Normandy. What's going on?
They should use it for a body shield.
Oh,
yeah, no. People are gonna get so bad. I love Band of Brothers before people start. It's like one of the best TV or whatever media productions ever made.
Of course.
Yeah. Can you believe that was 24 years ago that came out?
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I mean, my wife just rewatched it because we watched Masters of the Air. On the new one. Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
Great. Okay. After she watched that, she's like, I've never seen Band of Brothers. So we sat down and watched Band of Brothers. It was quite awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic series. Okay. The next one is Denzel doesn't need practice.
Denzel's scenes would be with each member individually. He was their interrogator. I decided there was more to be gained by not letting them get to know each other, hoping their scenes would carry the electricity of a first meeting. Besides, I knew Denzel wouldn't want to rehearse anyway. Instead, we did research together. We went on night maneuvers with the 11th Armored Cavalry at Fort Irwin in the Mojave Desert. Months later, when Denzel climbed into a cutout model of an M1 Abrams tank on the set, he knew what it felt like to fire high-explosive rounds in a real one. The fact is, great actors, I mean the really great ones, don't need much help when it comes to preparation.
I like the story. Just got right into it. I think that's part of his method. Gets into the character, gets his hands dirty as much as he can for each role. The next clip here talks about how he does stay on his method, how he would call junior members of the military son. He calls, "Hey, son." He caught that with other officers doing that in real life.
I could never tell how much Denzel was internalizing when we'd visit an army base or go drinking with soldiers after hours. He was taciturn when he met the real version of the character he was to play. The next night, when I looked at dailies, everything about Denzel had changed. His eyes were troubled. His posture bore an unseen burden. But he would rather die than let his characterization reveal even a glint of the guilt or dishonor that tormented him. Instead, he would play against it, ferociously. "What's my character whining and moaning about? I'm fine," he'd say to me. "I'm fucking squared away." He was right. The audience knew exactly what had happened to him. They'd watched it happen on screen. He'd commanded Sean Astin, playing the gunner, to pull the trigger on a lethal round of friendly fire. To see him deny that mistake's dominion over himself was heartbreaking and ennobling. I arranged for him to talk to a local psychologist. When Denzel returned to my office after his meeting, I asked how it had gone. He nodded solemnly.
I get it,
he said. You going to talk to him again? I asked.
Nah, he wanted to get all up in my shit. Fuck that.
At last,
I just love that how he
Yeah.
got to his character so much and stuff, and then he sees like a war psychologist, people who treat
Yeah.
social workers, mental health,
Yes.
and he's like, nah, I don't need him getting.
Well, it sounded like that psychologist may have known, oh man, I got Denzel on my couch.
Sure.
Why don't we start talking about you, Denzel? So he was that's when he definitely put the walls up. No, this is not about me.
This next clip talks about Meg Ryan may being afraid of flying.
the problem seemed sorted until I received a call from Meg's agent, who informed us she was too terrified to go up in a helicopter. At first, I thought he was kidding. She was playing a helicopter pilot. How could anyone think they were going to make a movie about flying without flying? But apparently, that's exactly what some business affairs lawyer at the studio had assured the agent when he first raised his concern when negotiating Meg's deal. It was even in her contract, though no one had bothered to tell us.
Again, Ed, miscast.
It was a miscast. I know he's skirting it a little bit. He's not talking too much to it, but yeah.
Well, did she just think that was all going to be handled with visual effects or something, that she would not have to be in a helicopter?
Well, I forgot to label this next clip again. There's a couple I forgot to label. If this one doesn't address what they did to mitigate that, I'll tell you.
The moment where Matt Damon's young medic character almost falls out of the helicopter could only be accomplished by the actor doing it for real. Its power in the film is, at least in some measure, because the terror on Matt's face is genuine. But Matt never hesitated. He was 22 when we met, and at that time I had no idea how far he would go in search of authenticity. A mutual friend from Harvard, I think it was a professor, had sent me an early draft to Good Will Hunting and asked if I would meet with Matt and discuss it. The script, although unformed at that point, was lovely, and I was happy to make a few suggestions. Years later, I was delighted when Matt and Ben thanked me in the credits for my help.
Oh, okay. So that was just them thanking Ed Zwick for their help in Good Will Hunting. That's cool. What they did, though, is they actually created a lot of the flying scenes that you see with Meg. The end scene with Meg flying away, that was real. That was her in the helicopter. You couldn't fake that. She's in the helicopter, no CGI 96. She's just in a helicopter that takes off low, when she leaves Denzel there. Mm-hmm. But throughout all the action sequences that we see in the film with her yelling and stuff, they had in a truck, they made this fake helicopter thing on the back of a big truck, of a helicopter shell on it's like a semi-type truck near a cliff to give that over the air shot. So she was never in the air. She was on a rolling truck.
Gotcha. There is that scene at the very end of the movie where Denzel kind of remembers that maybe he saw her.
Yeah, she was in the helicopter then.
She was actually in the chopper as it was lifting off the ground.
That's what I was referring to. That was the one scene that she was
actually okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, but for all the think about that's an easy shot. She's in one shot. She flies away, but they probably landed right away afterwards or something.
Yeah,
she didn't go very high. That's okay. Some people do have a fear of flying. So, again, miscast a little bit. Like, hi, I want to be in your film to be a helicopter pilot, but I'm afraid of heights.
I'm not going to ever get in a helicopter. Okay, well, that's a problem. You also don't talk like you're from the South either, but that's neither here nor there.
This clip here talks about how even Matt Damon impressed Denzel, and that's pretty important. 42-year-old Denzel was impressed by 22-year-old Matt at the time. Here we go.
While casting Courage, Matt came to mind as I began to meet actors for the drug-addicted member of Meg Ryan's crew, Specialist Delario. By that point, Matt was 24 and had done School Ties and a few smaller roles. He came in and read for me, and I cast him on the spot. As fate would have it, Matt's first day of shooting was scheduled opposite Denzel, and his close-up was up first. You can tell something special is happening on set by watching the crew. Even the dolly grip, who'd made hundreds of movies, was paying attention. As those two actors began to work, it was as if a spell had been cast over the set. As we finished Matt's coverage, Denzel caught my eye and nodded approvingly. Later, he took me aside.
"Who's that kid?"
he asked. I told him it was Matt's first big role. "Damn," he said. "Better get my game on." He almost blew me off the screen.
That's pretty cool. That's
yeah,
nice.
it is pretty cool. Yeah, it's always nice to hear too. Like Denzel, of course, a very established actor in the mid '90s. Of course, this is his peak kind of film time, mid '90s, early 2000s of Denzel's power at the theater. Give that kind of accolade. You didn't have to. You didn't have to tell Ed anything. But the fact to say, who is that guy? Who's that guy that I was with? I've never seen this guy before. Oh, that's Matt Damon. He's a young kid and acting now. And like, boy, I better. And that's just it. When you're the young pups, you come in hungry, you're starving yourself or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're coming. It's a wake up call to the veteran actors to say, ooh, I better.
Yeah. Like, hey, I got to step it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're hungry for roles. Like Matt Damon was hungry for roles. And that's
exactly.
And he was also hungry for food too.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah.
This next one talks about Matt's weight loss.
Matt wanted to physicalize the ravages of his character's addiction in the final scenes and went back to L.A. to lose weight. He returned, having lost so much, so quickly, unsupervised, that I was worried he might not make it through filming. I knew it was a big moment in Matt's career, but was it worth him jeopardizing his health? Watching him was terrifying, but also inspiring. His performance was wonderful, and his career took off. A great actor is an athlete of the heart.
I like that line there. A great actor is an athlete of the heart. As Katie pointed out last episode when we covered Ed's book here, she said, boy, he's got a way with words. Yeah, he's a wordsmith. I think that's what makes him write these screenplays or help the screenplays. Yeah,
absolutely.
You remember the end of the film where Denzel's character is walking to his family home? He's got his luggage from the motel in his hands, and there's that bike in front of his way that he picks up.
Yeah.
And puts upright. Well, there's a story behind that scene.
Okay.
We had come to know and trust each other. By the end of shooting Courage, we hardly needed to talk at all. Sometimes, at the end of a take, I might step out from behind the camera, and before I could speak, he would say, I know. And he usually did. The best example of this nonverbal collaboration took place on the final day of shooting. We were filming his character's return home. Lieutenant Colonel Nat Serling has dealt with his guilt and self-loathing and accomplished the mission of corroborating the Medal of Honor for the female pilot. His wife and children are waiting inside the house. He needs to put his life back together. I called action. He walked up the stone pathway carrying his briefcase, then up the steps, and into the house. I called cut. We could easily have moved on, but in one of the rare moments of the shoot, we found ourselves ahead of schedule. I sat in my chair, staring at the little house. Something was off. I called out to the prop man and asked if he had any kid stuff on the truck. I've got a bike, he said. Perfect. I took the bike, wheeled it into the shot, and then laid it across the walkway. Now it looked like a real house. I didn't tell Denzel. Most actors tense up when you say action. But if you were to attach sensors to register Denzel's heart, perspiration, and respiratory rate, my guess is you would find him in a kind of monk-like trance. His relaxation is so profound, it's possible his vitals go down rather than up. His unique gift is simply being present. I called action again. Denzel walked in from below the camera, carrying his briefcase. Midway up the walk, there was now a bicycle. I can imagine another actor gracefully sidestepping it and walking past it into the house. I can even think of an actor or two who might turn back to the camera and ask, is this supposed to be here? Not Denzel. He looked down at the bike, stopped, put his briefcase on the ground, then reached for the handlebars and set it upright on the lawn before continuing into the house. He was a man putting his life back in order. It's the moment in the movie when I begin to cry.
What did you think of that?
That's pretty cool. That's a cool story. That little bicycle, it added some meaning to the scene.
Yeah, it's neat to hear those behind the scenes stuff. It's just the things that we might take for granted. Oh, of course we would as a viewer not notice these things, but yeah, it's neat to hear those tales of what happens behind the screen when they have an extra day of shooting or something, or to see the actor like Denzel going with it. Oh, there's something different here, and he does something different with that, something different, and they can keep it or not keep it, but allow the actors to feel something or to do something different with the scene. I think it's great to see. This is the last clip. Well, Ed shares a bad story about Denzel. Denzel's not perfect, Jared.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know. Here we go.
Lest my portrait of Denzel risk becoming hagiography, I'll offer one slightly less admirable anecdote. Denzel had been involved coaching teams with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America since we'd met. He would do everything he could to fly back to LA on the weekend on his own dime to coach his own kids' teams. And as one who had coached my own son's teams, I admired his dedication. It was a Friday, and I'd gone out of my way to get his work finished so he could catch an early flight. I waved goodbye and wished him good luck with the game. Later that night, I happened to turn on the TV in my hotel room to watch the Knicks in a playoff game in New York. There was Denzel, sitting courtside with Spike Lee. On Monday, when he walked on the set and saw the look on my face, he knew he'd been busted. All he said was, I know.
Oh, man. Oh, what a scumbag.
What a piece of shite that guy is. I tell you, I'm not going to watch another Denzel film for as long as I live. I hate to end the episode on that sour note. Thank you so much for coming on this. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you enjoyed watching Courage Under the Fire again and coming on this podcast and talking about this film with me.
Yeah, it was fun to revisit after so many years. It was fun to revisit the film. I really enjoy the film. I was glad to have the opportunity.
It was okay. Would you recommend people to see this film or see it again?
Definitely.
It's been a while. Okay.
Definitely. It's definitely worth a watch. Great performances. One thing we didn't touch on too much was Ed Zwick. He knows how to shoot big, sweeping, epic war scenes, and this has a few, and it's all the more impressive. You know, these are real A-10 Warhogs. These are real Huey Cobras, the Huey Medevac choppers, the tanks. It's all practical. I mean, this was, you know, I'm not saying this 96 was before the prevalence of CGI, but this is still
practical.
Yeah, it's practical. And all the war scenes are well staged. You can tell what's happening. You get a good sense of geography.
Yeah.
And that's something also I really appreciated.
Yeah, no, and thanks for bringing that up. Yes, we definitely don't want to not miss that Ed has a knack for war. Of course, it will be reinvestigated again, Siege, and also in Last of the Samurai, but not too much after that per se. But he definitely has a flair for it, and he's definitely can do a epic sweeping type look or feeling of war without glamorizing it or without making it seem silly or over the top.
Although I gotta say, the scene of the napalm going off it's striking. And I wonder, where they shot that? I mean, obviously they're in Iraq in the film, but if this was shot in like maybe the Badlands of America, or
I think they actually just bombed Iraqis, I think, for the film.
They're just like, screw it, let's just go back.
We might as well. Two birds with one stone, hit the enemy and film it too.
Yeah, that's but no, I thought all that stuff was extremely well done.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, he didn't bring up the book about any of that. It's funny, in the book he doesn't mention, which is, you can't write too much. I mean, the book would be 40 hours long, but
it does seem like when you're coordinating large machinery like that is probably a movie's worth of work in itself.
Good
like
point,
you have to communicate with the pilots, where the pilots need to be, who's shooting that from the air, and all the helicopters that are flying around with fake bullets and squibs going off and people falling off cliffs. That in itself is probably more than a lot of movies have to deal with for their whole running time. So that's something else I really appreciated about the film.
No, thank you so much for bringing it up. Very well said. Yeah, good stuff. And say again, Jared, where people can find you and your show and what your show's about.
I am the co-host of the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. We talk about things that we enjoy. Me and my co-host Matt and Mike, we are all children of the 70s, as Ryan is himself. And we talk about stuff that we loved, things that we still love. We do delve into pop culture of the present and the past. We have a lot of fun. Come over and check us out. The Hyperspace, 3 words, Podcasting in the 25th Century. Look for the robot with the microphone. That's us.
I love it. I love it, Jared. You're a good man. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you on the next episode, folks.